Lauren, welcome to round 2.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here again.
Yes, we love our high ticket sales big sister in the
Oh,
house.
cute. I love that.
So thank you for being here with us. I wanted to touch on some points that I think are really important to the conversation, but we missed last time. And the first one being, you said sales is a reflection of our own identity and our own personal development. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I love this question because to me, sales is like getting paid to go to therapy. Because you cannot do sales effectively if you have anything going on up here, anything in your personal life. Like, your energy is so important, the way you show up on a call. I mean, you are truly like committed to showing up for the other person on the other side of the call. You're there to help them. You're there to prescribe them the solution that they need. And if you don't show up with that energy, then you're kind of robbing them from that experience. So there's a couple things that you can kind of see, or maybe there's a couple things that I see often that sales reps maybe are struggling with on their personal side, on the identity side, that translates into the sales skills. And a lot of that, the first one is conviction. I feel like this is probably the most obvious one. But if you don't believe in what you're selling, if you feel like maybe the results aren't going to really get them where they want to go, you feel like maybe there's bad ethics in the company, that will show up on the sales call so strong. And even if you say, we're the best, we'll get you here, we'll get you there, if you don't truly believe it to your core, you will not be selling. So that's the number one thing, is you have to believe that you can get them to the results. Otherwise, there's no point in selling it. You're doing a disservice to everyone on the call, everyone in the situation. So that's the most obvious one. There's a couple other too that aren't always as obvious, but are very fun for my shy girls who are trying to get into sales. One being, emotional regulation. A lot of us are not used to confrontation. We're not used to asking questions. We're not used to asking for what we want. So when you get into a sales scenario and you have to ask for money, and you have to challenge people and not take no for an answer when they're trying to let their fear overcome them and not move forward, you have to get out of your own head and realize, one, it's not about you, right? It's about the prospect. It's about getting them to the solution. And you have to break out of your comfort zone and go into that conflict and go into that confrontation to actually get to the end of the call and get to the conversion. So it can be a little bit of rejection therapy, and it's really challenging for some newer salespeople.
Well, I imagine too, if you don't believe in the product, right, you're not going to get the sale. So if you're working for a company where you don't necessarily believe in what the company stands for and the product, but you're now a sales rep for them, how do you change your conviction and the energy that you give off to say, hey, you should buy this product and this is why, and we are the solution for you?
Find a new offer. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I think that, the way that I would handle that is by getting more involved. So if you find that maybe there's some things that are falling short from the sales pitch that you're providing, and you're finding that the customers are coming back unhappy because of a couple things, I think giving feedback and raising your hand is super important. A lot of people say, I'm here for a job. I just show up, I do the calls, I close them. That's my job. That's the only thing that I should worry about. The rest is on the company. I think that having delivery be in sync with sales and making sure that blends seamlessly is, from an ethics perspective, one of the most important things, right? Because as a salesperson, you are setting the tone, you're setting the example. So if you oversell and then they underdeliver, I mean, there's a responsibility on both sides. So I think it's a balance of maybe changing the sales pitch to be more accurate so people don't get disappointed, and working with the offer owner or working with the company to say, okay, we're finding these things are falling short. What can I do to maybe help, or what can we do to change things to make sure that people are happy at the end of the day, to make sure that they're happy and they have raving reviews, and they're not leaving us a bad Yelp review with 1 star, right? Like, there's things that you can do on both sides. So I think that just taking that responsibility is the first step.
You make sales sound very, not just exciting, but genuine. And I think when people think of sales, they often think of like these slimy sales guys who are trying to steal their money or scam them. So what makes what you do in high ticket sales different from the guy who's like the slimy sales guy just trying to sell you another product?
Yeah. I mean, I think sales gets a bad rap for for that reason, right? Like everyone's been sold something that they didn't want because they felt manipulated into it. And I think there's a difference between manipulation and also having, you know, the skills, the emotional empathy to tap into someone's true fears. So for me, I think when I'm on sales calls, the way that I can sleep at night is really asking myself on the call, do I think that I can help this person? If the answer is yes, then I continue forward. And, you know, if I feel at any point that they're getting uncomfortable, or if they truly don't want it and they're just trying to kind of like go along with what I say, or they feel manipulated, like you can feel that energy too. I think a good sales rep takes that as an indication that they probably aren't a good fit for the program and they know when to walk away. The manipulative sales rep will say, I don't care, I just want the commission, and they'll continue forward.
What do you think about the question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to buy this product right now? I feel like I get that so often in a sales call, and I'm like, I don't know, a 5 or a 7. Like, I'm not going to tell you how I'm feeling. So is that something that you use or teach your girls? Or I guess, how do you feel about that question?
Yeah. That's so funny. If you were 5 or 7, I'd be like, let's hang up now. I do use that as a temperature check sometimes. So a temperature check essentially is after you go through the pitch, after you go through the program details, you ask them, hey, where are we sitting? You get a numeric value to how they're feeling about the program. It is a very powerful tool because some people can say, yeah, I feel good about it, but good compared to what? Good on what scale? So it can be good to kind of give them a number to go off of. And it's a really good way to uncover if there's any like objections that you're going to have come up. So if someone says an 8, it's like, okay, well, what's stopping it from being a 10? If someone says a 5, it's like, okay, wow, what did we do wrong? Because we're really, really far off.
Right.
So it can be a good gauge to start to uncover things that are probably going to end up losing you the sale. So I do teach it. But there's also other ways to do it too, and just ask, you know, tie downs and temperature checks throughout. You don't necessarily have to use the numeric scale, but it is a pretty easy one for, I would say, the normal buyer to understand.
Absolutely. There's a lot of sales programs out there that people feel are scams. What would you say to that, and how is your program differently? Because obviously you're not trying to scam people. You're our sales big sister. You want everyone to succeed, and you're coming from a truly genuine place. So how have you gone in and set your program apart from the rest of them?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many sales training programs, like you said, and they all kind of serve different purposes. And I think they're all really valuable and really helpful. You know, I've done courses where I learn a framework and I learn a script and I learn how to run a call. And when I was first starting out, that was extremely valuable because I had never run a 1-call close, which is how high ticket sales is done. And, but there's also the step beyond that, right? Because you lay the foundation. It's kind of like going to elementary school. Like you learned your ABCs, you learned your 1, 2, 3s, you learned all of the basics. But then when you get into the real world, and what happens with a lot of these, you know, people who go through courses that are a little bit more rudimentary, they get into the real world and they realize, wow, this is not like the role plays that I did with my community. This is not like the role plays and the things that I trained for in this course. It's a lot different. It's a lot harder. So if you don't have a mentor to walk you through how to kind of adjust to those nuances of actually talking to a real customer versus someone that's your buddy, and kind of like teach you how to read the room, teach you how to bring them to a yes, then it can be really difficult. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a mentor that you pay, right? Like obviously that I'm a mentor, there's other mentors out there that you can hire. But a lot of the times that can be a sales manager. I tell girls that are getting into it, if you don't have a solid sales manager, then that's the moment that you know you should hire a mentor.
What would you say is the number one thing that you teach your girls to help them find success?
Question. Number one would be just to be present on calls. I think it can be really easy to learn reframes. You're watching all of these clips, trying to memorize the next thing that you can ask or the next thing that you can say, and it fully disengages you from the conversation. And people can feel that. So when you're constantly thinking about what am I going to say next? How am I going to handle this? How am I going to get them to buy? You're not present in the conversation and you're not really listening. I think that the biggest hack is actually to just come to the call as a human and have a conversation and really be curious and dive into why they're there in the first place. Why are they having this problem? Why haven't they been able to solve it themselves? The curiosity piece is going to get you so much farther than the most sophisticated NLP, psychology, hack reframes, NEPQ, whatever that you can learn.
And I think that stands true even just in daily conversation. Like we have so much in this world that is distracting us and taking our attention away from this present moment. And that goes beyond the anxiety that you feel about the future or like thinking about the past. It goes of like our phones, our computers, the billboards on the street. And so being able to be present in that moment with your client and with, you know, in this moment, us talking, being present is such a powerful tool that I think people forget to use just on the daily.
100%. And you're obviously on a screen when you're doing high ticket sales, but there's so much that you can do to feel connected with body language, like looking towards the camera, not looking around. Like even here, if I were to pick up my phone, you'd probably be like, okay, Lauren, you're not paying attention to me at all, right? So it's like you have to engage with them and make that connection as strong as you can, despite not being in the same room. I also teach a lot of, you know, body language, leaning in when you want to be curious, pulling back, leaning back a little bit when you want the pressure to kind of die down, and using those things strategically to make the person at ease. Right. And also just kind of, I don't know, make things a little bit smoother and more organic.
Absolutely.
I'm stressful.
And think about the other person on the end too, because they're like, this is money that I'm going to be spending. So they're already thinking, I don't know if I want to spend this. It might be high stress for them because again, it comes back to finances and how they're feeling about whether they want to spend the money or not. So interesting that you say all that too with the technology portion, because I had mentioned to you before starting this podcast that I wanted to get rid of the laptop because I feel like it's a huge divider. So outside of body language, is there any other tools that you teach your girls or that you use to deepen that connection when you're on a call?
Understanding and having empathy that answering some of these questions might be the first time someone's admitting their problem out loud. And holding space for them and being able to give them that outlet to admit that they have a problem and then also process it in real time. So a lot of people will go through everything really quick and kind of try to push to the sale without giving them space to process that. And I think that's the biggest mistake because it can feel overwhelming. So some tools, some tactics, pausing. I love pausing and slowing down intentional sentences to give that space to create some emphasis on what you're trying to say, convey a message, and ultimately just give them space to feel so they can process and they can get to their own conclusion without you feeling like they're pressuring.
Would you say creating a feeling is one of the number one sales tricks? Because I've heard that often, that you want to get them to feel something and that then creates the sale. Do you believe that?
100%. I think when we are looking at transcripts and scripts and, you know, AI is a great tool, and I've been using AI to audit my own calls and audit my students' calls, and there's a lot to be said about looking at what was said, right? But like how you say it is really important too. And I think that's where you can kind of get the feeling across. Like you could say the perfect thing, but have the wrong tonality, the wrong inflection, be coming with like the wrong energy, and it would fall flat, versus like maybe you mess up a little bit, or maybe like you didn't say the perfect thing, but the way you said it made them feel heard. Truly sales is getting someone to like, know, and trust you. That's how they're going to buy. So to me, that is far greater than just the words themselves. You need to have that rapport. You need to have that actual connection and get them to feel something.
Going back to the AI piece, I think there's a lot of fear around AI taking over not just any job, but a sales job in general. What would you say to that? And how do you feel about AI potentially taking over a sales job?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's everyone's fear, you know, any job that we're in, right? I think there's pieces of the sales cycle that will be taken over by AI and will be replaced by AI. And I think that there's going to be some people who adapt to it more and more comprehensively, and there's going to be some people who resist it, and they're going to keep certain sales positions with a human. And I think that that is the best way to do it. So any coaches listening, don't jump to replace your DM setters with AI. People can tell. But yeah, I think, the biggest thing is when you get an automated message or you get a message from an AI bot, even if it's not super, super obvious, to me, there's still an energetic exchange that you can just tell. And I find that when you have a human go in and actually follow up, ironically enough, they answer. So there's something to be said about the energy behind a message that I think AI cannot replicate. But I also don't want sales reps to be completely scared of it, right? Like I just posted a video. I've been using AI for my follow-ups. So my AI reads my transcripts. It knows the outcomes. It knows when I said I would follow up with someone. It knows if there's a downsell opportunity, and it puts little reminders in my calendar. I'm the worst at follow-ups. I'm like the classic salesperson that whatever's next, whatever's in front of me is what I'm paying attention to. So that's really helped me kind of bring people around. And, honestly, I was leaving money on the table without that system. So I don't think being completely scared of using it is the right strategy. But I also believe that, there are a lot of coaches out there that are going to want to continue doing it the right way. And honestly, those are the ones that you want to work with anyways, because they're likely more ethical rather than like sliding in AI in every single position they can just to save some money.
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of like with food and dieting and watching your calories, all that. Everything in moderation, 100%. No matter what. And yeah, I truly believe that about AI, and I truly believe that about honestly anything in life. Like it's such a gray area. Like you can not to talk politics, but like you can even look at politics as like, I believe in a gray area. I don't necessarily think one party's 100% right, just like I don't think AI is 100% right all the time. There is this gray area, hence why we don't eat sugar 100% of the time. It's something that's there and it's good, but it's not meant to be used as like our fuel source. So yeah. With that said, I completely understand where you're coming from. You talk a lot about energy and how that plays into sales. What are your beliefs around energy?
Oh man, I've never been asked my beliefs around it. I just believe in it, I guess. But I mean, I think that your energy is the most valuable resource and currency that you have. And, one thing that I do train on a lot is you can hear the hustle culture in high ticket sales. People talk about you grind and you work really hard and you can make all this money. And I actually think that there's something to be said about giving yourself rest and holding that energy and making sure you show up with good energy. One of my students was struggling with her calls. She had been closing at like a 65%. She was crushing it. And then all of a sudden she dipped down to like 30. And I'm like, what's going on? For a week, 2 weeks, going on 3. I'm like, what's going on? What's happening? Like, let's try to figure this out. Come to find out, she had been stacking offers and stacking calls. She was taking anywhere from 10 to 13 calls a day, no days off. And I was like, my girl, you have to rest. You have to give yourself space, right? It's kind of like content creation in a way too. Like if you don't get outside and touch some grass, like you're no longer a human. And when you lose that human connection, that's when it's going to be hard to connect with someone on a sales call. And you're going to end up losing more calls out of it. So I told her, I said, take Sundays off, block your Sunday off and limit 10 calls max per day, right? Which is still a lot, but she did. And her close rate went back up because she was able to give herself that space to recover and kind of protect her energy. And yeah, I mean, I think it's super important to take care of yourself first. And, it ends up making you more money than the grind.
Absolutely. Well, we think about the culture we live in, and we talked about this a little bit last time, of constant hustle, constant grind, and you see these big entrepreneurs and the people who are up there making the millions grinding away, but that's not realistic. At the end of the day, you are going to burn out, especially if you're not taking care of your health, if you're not sleeping well, if you are not prioritizing giving yourself that rest. And I know my coach has even said this to me about go touch some grass, like get outside, because if you are isolating yourself and trying to just grind away, you're not forming those human connections. You're not living life to its fullest, enjoying the experiences in front of you.
Yeah.
And that only hinders your ability to connect with someone then, either on a call or in business, and then ultimately in life.
100%. Yeah. And some of the practices I do to protect my energy is kind of like what you said, just taking care of yourself. But, you know, I find that if you are doing something like sales where you are presenting so much with energy, you have to be on a meal plan. You have to be working out. You have to be exercising, going for walks, taking care of your body, right? Like supplements, I mean, taking care of our brains. I'm a big creatine person. I think that brain cognitive health is so important to stay sharp. And meditation, like meditating has been life-changing for me. Just taking that time to be still and not reacting to the monkey brain and wanting to go do the things and saying that I don't have the time to sit there for 20 minutes, which is ridiculous. We all do. So that has probably been one of the best things, the best additions to my energy refuel, and journaling and just like taking that space. So
when you meditate, do you set an intention? Because I've heard of two different ways of doing it. One is sitting in the silence and just focusing on being silent and feeling your body, feeling the energy around you. And then I've heard the other version of focus on the identity or the person that you want to be, the version of yourself that you want to be for that day. And then be there for 20 minutes and it'll shift your energy. What do you do when you practice?
Yeah, depends on the day. I think a lot of the times I am doing the identity work. I'm saying what I want I'm doing the identity work and saying who I want to be, not just for that day, but, you know, for a year down the road or 5 years down the road. And really visualizing who I am in that moment, what I'm doing, what I look like, how I'm feeling, what I'm smelling, what I'm seeing, like trying to get all of the sensory pieces together to make it as real as possible. So that would probably be, I would say, majority of the things that I work on. But I think too, there's a lot of power in the healing of meditation too. So I actually will go back to any moments in my life that maybe I haven't really resolved, or I feel like a little unrest, you know, traumatic moments, things that have kind of like stuck with me a little bit, and visualized myself in that moment and understanding maybe if I did something that I thought was a mistake, that I was just doing that to protect myself. That's been really great on, I think, just like the healing side of things and the emotional regulation, the nervous system regulation, because we hold on to so many of those traumas. We hold on to those things that happen to us. And to me, meditation's been the only thing that's been able to kind of get me over the hump of being able to regulate my nervous system when some of those triggers do come up, or some of those triggers feel a little more lingering.
To go back to the creatine portion of it, I actually haven't heard anything around this, so I'm just curious, how does creatine impact your brain?
Yeah, so creatine, and I'm not an expert at this, so don't quote me on anything, but from my understanding, creatine is great for your muscles, but it's also really good for your brain health. It's really good for your cognitive development. And I was listening to a podcast that was talking about, women specifically and their brain health and neurology, and women are much more susceptible to Alzheimer's and dementia and brain disease, and things like creatine can help, but also sleep is really huge. My family has Alzheimer's that runs in my genetics. So my grandmother has it and my father died from it. So I'm very conscious of that. And I think doing what I can and understanding as much as I can without trying to freak myself out is super important. And, I think that, like prioritizing sleep and taking the supplements that, I've kind of looked into that tend to lean towards some cognitive prevention.
Absolutely. I actually was just reading Jim Quick's book, and he outlines a list of 10 foods that are meant to help your brain. So I was like now eating blueberries and avocados and walnuts and celery juice, because apparently that's supposed to be really good for you. But it actually does make a difference, which is a crazy thing in your alertness, your focus, and all of it. And just being able to feed your brain something so good when in America, most of our food is processed. Most of it has chemicals in it, additives, hormones, etc. To be able to give our body something good, you notice it 100%. And I even did a video on this just a little while ago about how my 30-day detox literally changed the whole functioning of my body. Like,
it's incredible.
Maybe TMI, but I poop regularly now, which is crazy because
we love that.
Yeah, we love it. I didn't do that before though because of how shit the food was that I was eating. So
just to one more thing on that, because I think this is actually an angle that I think is really cool about high ticket sales too. So fun fact about me, I used to be 185 pounds.
Shut up. Really?
Yeah. And I'm 5'9", so I'm a tall girl, but you know, I grew up very lean, very slim, tall, long limbs, and I loved my body. And COVID hit, I gained 50 pounds. I went from 135 pounds to 185 pounds. And a lot of it was inflammation. A lot of it was just from poor diet, lack of exercise. COVID kind of ruined my routine, and I let it stay that way and became complacent. And I mean, it happened almost overnight, it felt like. And I started to lose the weight. I started to get things off. But one of the things that truly got me to a place where I understood what actually made my body tick, what had me losing the weight and keeping it off, was working with fitness coaches. So I had to sell these fitness programs. Obviously, I had to know how they work. So I had to be in the programs. And I was just like, wow, I'm getting all this for free. I'm getting paid to lose weight, and I'm getting paid to take care of my body. I feel better. I look better. I was making more money. I mean, honestly, it was such a cheat code. So I think any girl that is interested in fitness, I'm a big advocate for fitness coaching sales, because it is a very good, it's a good offer to sell, because to me it feels good. You're helping someone else lose weight, live a better life. You get to learn the things about living a healthier life. And honestly, it's kind of an easy sell.
Right.
It's a little bit of an easy sell. So I really push fitness coaching if you wanted to get into high ticket sales.
Well, especially when you talk about the why and having conviction around what you say.
Exactly.
You're giving someone the gift of health. Why wouldn't you have conviction around that?
Yeah, it's fun to see the success too. Like, oh my gosh.
Absolutely. When you're talking about trauma, was there a specific moment in your life that you've been processing and working through that has helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So a lot of the trauma that I've kind of been working through over the last, honestly, 3 years, and you go to therapy and you do the breath work and you kind of do the meditation, but until you really kind of look at the core, I guess, series of events behind it, you can't really uncover it. And something that I had realized I was repressing quite a bit was I was sexually assaulted when I was 15. And that really shaped the relationships that I had with men for, honestly, the rest of my life, right? The way that I interacted with men, the way that I looked at men. And it was much more of I'm trying to think. There was obviously a lack of trust, right? When you have a situation where you're with a peer, you're with someone that you're supposed to be safe with, and that safety gets taken away, it shapes the relationship, it shapes that trust and creates a distrust, but also some level of desire and some level of need for attention, right? So I developed that pretty early on and kind of became prone to these cycles, and often actually got assaulted a couple more times in my life, in my mid-20s, until I really realized, I have to set a boundary, and a lot of this, obviously is not coming from me, but I also wasn't respecting myself because it happened to me so early on in life and so young, and deciding that I was going to, say no stronger and kind of take back some of that control was a big thing for me in my early 20s, my mid-20s. Ironically enough, what was more traumatizing was something that came out of one of those assaults. So, I was in a relationship in my late 20s, and, we lived together, thought we were going to get married. It was a very intimate, very long-term relationship. And one day he opened my journal and read my journal. I don't know if this was the first time. I don't know if it was just the time that he found something. And I had been processing an assault that had happened to me a couple years before. And he got very angry that I wasn't going to him, that I was journaling about it and just trying to process it without talking to him. So not only did I not get the privacy to kind of go through and process my emotions alone, he kind of almost made it about himself. So again, it was a very just, I think, traumatizing experience around trust and around, trust and intimacy that was violated. And I have been single for the last 4 years, really to kind of dig into that, to figure out what I truly want without anything distracting me, without, that need for attention or that need for validation that was kind of coming through those traumas. And yeah, I think, for the first time in my life over the last years, and a lot to do with, Nick's program truly, and the work that we've done here is being able to say, I don't need to feel validation from, someone else. I don't need to have that attention be something that I'm seeking. And, it's like, it's so corny, but it's like the love has to come from yourself, right? Mm-hmm. I was looking for someone to save me for the longest time. And I think between the travel that I do and the work that I've been doing on the personal side and even growing my business, I've learned that loving myself is way more important than finding love from a man. And that stability is so refreshing. So,
and it's not easy to get there either. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you got to that point and the process of learning to love yourself? Because I think we often say it, but there's no easy way to describe how we get there. Mm-hmm. And then people are like, well, I don't know how to love myself, So what was that process like for you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think mostly just removing myself from anything that was putting me into a place of insecurity, right? And like a lot of that was not necessarily removing dating, but removing intimacy in dating. So learning to start relationships, develop relationships without adding a physical element, without, moving too fast, without kind of like doing the daydreamer fantasies that I know a lot of women, and myself included, are very, very guilty of doing. And just looking at things at face value and then telling myself, okay, if this person leaves my life today, am I okay or not? Am I going to be okay if tomorrow they just stopped talking to me? And if the answer is no, then I knew with myself that I was not in a stable position to date. So it was kind of just a repeat process of doing healing, looking at myself, putting myself in situations that I could test those boundaries and kind of see how I would respond and see how stable I really was, right? And, it took a long time until finally there was a couple moments when I would be dating someone and I'd be like, I really like this guy. I really think this is going to work out. And my boundaries would be compromised somehow. I would be, maybe there's something that would just be off. And instead of reaching for the affection and like reaching to feel loved and to be accepted, I said, you know what? No, I'm actually good. Like, I'm totally fine being alone, and I'm totally fine moving on from this relationship because this doesn't serve me. And I think those are the moments that I realized, okay, I feel like I've processed, and it's never something that you get over, but I've learned how to regulate myself enough that I'm super confident that the next relationship I will be in will be, a very healthy one. It will be, something that's fulfilling on all sides.
I completely hear you. And I think a lot of women share that experience, especially in a culture that says you shouldn't be single and you're not worthy if you are single, and you're kind of looked at as like what the fuck is wrong with you if you are single. And I think that's shifting a little bit, and we're getting to a healthier place as a culture, especially with, Emma Watson coming out as self-partnered, and a lot of female entrepreneurs showing up and staying single and being like, hey, we are still worthy. We are still amazing. Just because we don't have a partner doesn't make us any less of that. But it's not always easy to get to that place. And I also know I've done the same thing in a different context, but like, you are anchoring your self-worth on someone else seeing you as wonderful, beautiful, and incredible instead of you knowing you have it in yourself. And then when you anchor your validation in that person, you lose sight of yourself. You start compromising your boundaries, as you said. And then at the end of the day, you're like a little duckling waiting for their praise and attention.
Yeah.
Instead of holding your own and going into the world as a strong woman.
100%. It kind of is like the personal reflection that we talked about in sales, right? Like relationships it's just like sales. It's the same thing. And when you find yourself, feeling lost and feeling unfulfilled or feeling that kind of desperation, like that's when, you have to really kind of take an inner look and be like, okay, well, what am I finding that's not enough with just me? Where am I falling short on this relationship to feel like I can't live without this person? Like that's not a healthy thing, especially, 3 weeks into it. Right. And like that was my cycle in my 20s of, just feeling like I would die if this person left. And you just develop those habits and your nervous system doesn't know that it's not life threatening and it doesn't know how else to respond. And but yeah, ultimately, there was something that I was going to say in response to that I was like, I think the other moment too, and this is a smaller one that I noticed that made me go, okay, I'm a lot better than I was before, is when people make the comments of like, so when are you getting married? Or why are you still single? And you still have time. You're 27, right?
Yeah.
So I'm 32. So I get those questions asked a lot, especially with how much I travel. It's like your family members are like, okay, so when are you getting married? And that used to bother me so much. And I was recently home and one of my family members said that to me, and I water off a duck's back, didn't even flinch. And I was I just said, oh, yeah, we'll see, and I think those kinds of moments are the opportunities for you to see, okay, like, am I getting triggered by this? Like, that's when you know that maybe there's some healing that needs to be done still. And for me, that's a pretty good indication too of like, okay, I feel really good. That didn't rattle me. That didn't, bother me whatsoever. I'm completely fine in who I am and what I'm doing right now. I'm super confident I'm in the right place. I know that I'm not making any mistakes for me. And that's the only thing that matters. No one else's opinion is needed in that situation. And when you get to that point and you feel that, you're like, that feels good. It feels authentic.
Yeah. Well, and you also learn that perception is just their own judgment of themselves. It is not a reflection of you by any means. It is just a reflection of their own internal dialogue and what they perceive the world to be and what they perceive to be correct. But that isn't a reflection of you as a person.
100%.
Interesting to hear you say you've almost done exposure therapy throughout your healing process, because I think most people wouldn't do exposure therapy. They would maybe go more of the celibate route. So what made you do that versus just saying, hey, I'm not going to date altogether?
Yeah. Well, I think if you're going to go the celibate route but not talk to anyone, then what's the challenge? It's it's like if you're going to sit in a cabin in the woods and say, I'm going to do a year of celibacy, and you don't have any human interaction, then you're not really testing your boundaries. Like, you're not really saying, okay, do I have the capability of forming a relationship with someone and then saying, actually, I want you to get to know me for me without an intimacy element attached. And if they're okay with it or not, you having the rooted foundation to be okay with that answer. Right? Like that's the real celibacy test. And, it's something that I've actually been exploring myself, and, getting into relationships and testing where that lies, because I think it's super powerful, right? Like it's not normal. And I think there's a lot of pressure that says you got to try it before you buy it. No one test drives the vehicle before they leave the lot. And it's just like, it's kind of almost, I don't know. It feels like it's become so overcorrected from kind of the like, oh, no one talks about sex, no one talks about intimacy in that way, that's a private thing. So we've kind of overcorrected a little bit too far, to where it's like you should just do things because it's fun, and it's like you wouldn't tell someone to do drugs or drink every day because it's fun. So why would you tell them to like abuse their bodies that way too. And I think a lot of young women get pressured into doing things that they maybe don't want to by getting gaslit into thinking that they want it. Right?
Absolutely.
It's like, oh, it's fun. You're having fun. He's really hot. But it's like, okay, does that feel fulfilled? Like, do you actually feel good about what you did? And, not to shame anyone, right? Like everyone makes mistakes and you can regret something, but not, or let me rephrase that. You can think back on something and maybe want to do it a different way without regretting it. And I think that's, kind of the internal checks that you could do, but you can't test those boundaries by just shutting everyone out.
Absolutely. Well, and to your point, literally that is the whole college culture. And I think a lot of it starts there because there's so much pressure to like be a party girl and have sex with everyone. And you're like, that is what makes you cool in college. And I know for me, that's what I started doing in college was like having sex with a bunch of guys. And sorry, mother, like turn your ears off right now. But like you go to college and there is this pressure to like be sought after and get some and do that and party with the frat boys. And then you wake up the next morning feeling so unworthy, unfulfilled. And you're like, why do I feel this emptiness inside? But then you're like, oh, I shouldn't feel that way because no one else feels that way. But what I've realized over so many years is like most women had a similar experience of feeling pressured to perform or have more sex or like do things they wanted to do before they were actually ready because of the culture around it, instead of just having the confidence within themselves and knowing that they're worthy and validated without doing any of that. But we often get trapped in that pressure because we want to be liked by our peers.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's it's tricky. And you put labels, or I guess you put false parameters around things like, oh, well, if you guys have been on 3 or 4 dates, then like anything more than that is you're just waiting too long and you're being difficult or you're like trying to play hard to get. But I've been on 8 to 12 dates with someone and still not truly known them. So why would I be doing the most intimate thing that I could be doing with them?
Absolutely. So. Leo Skepi actually just released an Instagram video about how he's been celibate, I think, for 2 years. And he was talking about how he doesn't let anyone near his body because it's a temple and it is just the most golden piece of factory ever. So like why? Right? So like why would we allow someone to come and touch the golden temple when they haven't respectfully proven that they're worthy of it? And I think that's so true. We need to protect ourselves like we are a golden temple instead of just giving it away freely and allowing people to tear us down brick by brick.
Yeah. The last thing I think I'll say on this topic is, I think intimacy in general, when we talk about intimacy, vulnerability, all of that, sex is like one of the most intimate things you can do, but so many people are doing it so quick and so fast and kind of, almost getting it out of the way. Then when you do something like go to the gym with someone or go to the grocery store with someone, it's like, wow, this is like really intimate. It almost like you almost have that feeling of like, it feels more connected than sleeping with someone because we've almost desensitized ourselves to it. And I'd love to get back to a point where it's, in that category of, you go to the gym with someone and that's intimate, right? And I think there's different levels and different ways that you can grow that intimacy. But I think it's very ironic that we find those things to almost be too much, yet a lot of people will just sleep with someone on the first night and not think anything of it.
I remember... Jesus Christ. I'm just laughing that I'm telling this story all these years later. So when I was a junior in college, I remember my mom came down and helped me move into my new apartment. And I had condoms in one of the bags, but I forgot I put them there because it's, it's like 3 months between the end of this spring semester and the beginning of the fall. And so we're unpacking all of these bags. And of freaking course, she gets the bags with the condoms in them.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, no.
Were you mortified?
No. Oh, completely mortified. I don't even remember what I said, but I think I took them from her and like threw them in like my underwear drawer. And I'm like, oh, that's nothing. It's just a box of pens.
You
Like, I
don't
literally
look at
made
that.
up some bullshit that wasn't, obviously she knows that's not true. She's a smart woman.
Yeah.
And we ended up going to lunch afterwards. And she had like a very serious, like, why? She's like, don't you want to be in a relationship with someone? And I was so focused on that point at being liked by the people I was surrounded by, my peers, and literally everyone else except for myself, that I didn't care to hear what she said. And she wrote me a letter afterwards, and I still have that letter to this day, because she just wanted me to understand like how important I am, how important my body is, and like to protect that. But we forget when we're so focused on everyone else and not on ourselves that we are the most important thing we have to offer in this world. Our energy, our mind, our beautiful soul. And instead, we go ahead thinking everyone else is more important than us. And I think that comes back to why we allow things maybe in our life that we're not ready for instead of setting the boundaries. And it's a lesson that I have been learning and been on a journey, as well as you were talking about, of like, hey, we don't need to sleep together the first night. We can wait. And like, I want to actually get to know you as a genuine human being before we go there.
100%.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. With that said, it's super fun to date and travel. So I'm wondering what your experience has been like as you've been traveling the world.
Yeah. So I know we talked about this on the last pod, but I've mostly been in the US and have really just been, like LA, Scottsdale, Austin, like really fun places to date. I love dating. I think it's so fun. When people say that dates stress them out, I'm like, you are just taking it way too seriously.
Literally.
You're taking it way too seriously. Just have fun. And it's like, I love getting to know people, and we're in new cities. So I'll kind of start from the beginning. My roommate and I've been traveling with the same roommate for the last 8 months. We wanted to date, but we also didn't. We were like, I don't know, stranger danger, whatever. So we started doing two-mans, I think is what you guys call them. Gen Z, two-mans.
I'm not Gen Z. I don't think I'm Gen Z as a first note. Secondly,
you're not?
Two-man? I'm
like
27.
You're like
I think
on
I'm
the
Y,
cusp.
right?
Maybe. Yeah. Anyways.
Side note. Wait, what is two men?
So a two-man is, maybe I'm making this up. A two-man is a double date. It's just another term for a double date. So I know it sounds dirty.
Maybe I'm a millennial. Jesus Christ.
Oh my gosh. So when me and my roommate first started traveling, we would get on Hinge or whatever, and we'd be like, okay, cool, let's go out, but bring a friend for my friend. And we would do double dates, because it made things a lot more, like a lot less pressure. You're not going on a dinner date with someone that you don't know. And, we also looked at it as we only had like 4 or 5 weeks at a time in one place. So it's like, okay, well, if we're going to go out, we want to hang out with each other. 1, 2, it's like, what if the date's bad? You're almost kind of like, I don't know, like I hate to say wasting a night. Like we wanted to be strategic. So we were doing a lot of double dates in the beginning, and some of them were super fun. Some of them were not, but it's like, if they weren't fun, we just hung out with each other. We're like, at least we can entertain each other. So that was kind of the start of it. And we had a blast. And then, I was kind of easing into and getting more comfortable with the transient life and the digital nomad life. So I started dating a little bit more seriously. I had a relationship for a little bit in LA. I had a little bit of a fling in Tulum, and I had someone send me flowers in Mexico. Yeah, so I, that's a funny story too. And so yeah, I was in Mexico, and I had been briefly talking to someone. It was very, very early days, but he obviously was interested, and it was Valentine's Day. So he sent me flowers from the US to Mexico, and he probably had to call like 4 places. That has to not be an easy task.
No.
So that was pretty fun. That was very exciting. And I think when it comes to dating with my lifestyle, a lot of people would say, okay, you're trying to be chaste, you're trying to be difficult, just stay in one place, like just make it easy, just settle down. But I find it really romantic to kind of have that inconvenience factor, have something be like, okay, this is difficult. Like if you want to actually, talk to me, we have to plan it, or you have to FaceTime, or be a little bit more intentional, especially with me going abroad, being in a different time zone. And I think that the more effort that someone puts forward, it's kind of like a risk. Like dating is risk taking too. And it's like, okay, let's touch on different levels of risk. What are we comfortable risking on both sides, right? Like I believe in, equal reciprocity when it comes to that interest, that attraction, that, that pursuit. I do love it to be led by the man. I think that's very important, but, I will also sacrifice and risk because of my situation. And I think it raises the barrier for entry. Like you can't just plan a date for the weekend. You can't you just can't plan like one date night. Like it becomes a lot more intentional. And I'm a big romantic, I'm a big lover. And I think that like that intentionality has made dating in this season of my life actually really, really fun.
I love that. First of all, I freaking love that. And it is so, I think personally, this is just might be a hot take, but I think that the dating apps have taken all of the intentionality out of dating, and it freaking bugs the shit out of me because there is such, as you said, a low barrier to entry because of these dating apps. And it's like, oh, now I'm gonna just like date this person and like bare minimum effort.
Yep.
Like, how do you feel about chivalry? Chivalry?
Chivalry?
Yeah, that word.
I think that it's necessary. I think that it's so important in a relationship. Like backing up, right? So growing up, I always was a little bit of a tomboy. In my 20s, I definitely had more masculine dominant energy just because, I was in fight or flight mode, and that was kind of my default. And as I got older and I kind of tapped into my feminine energy, I'm realizing how important it is to feel that and like get that feeling from a man. And I think that it is something that, a man it's his responsibility to put a woman in her feminine energy and let her feel like she doesn't have to make those decisions. So, one of the big things for me in dating is men plan and men pay. And I think that that's super important. And a lot of people would say maybe it's superficial, but at the end of the day, it's telling me a couple of things. One, are you able to make decisions with someone else's well-being, someone else's consideration in mind, not just yourself, right? Because when you're planning a date and you're thinking about someone else, that shows me like you can be a parent. You can make decisions for me when we're together, right? Like I'm at the stage, I'm looking for my husband, I'm looking for the father to my children. So those are important to me. If you can't plan a date, how can I expect you to take our kid to daycare? How can I expect you to do anything that has to do with family decisions to lead? So that's super important. And then the paying part goes back to the risk. Are you willing to risk something financially, one dinner date, to see if it's something that you want to pursue? And I think when guys get really bent out of shape about, what they got in return for a date, that's a really good indicator that they're not the right person, that they're not a good fit, and that they're not, a genuine good human being, to be honest.
I completely agree. Like if you're doing this whole halvesies, like you should pay for half the dinner. I'm like, bitch, no.
I've never heard that in my life.
Oh my God. Dude, I've had it happen to me once. Thankfully, only once. But I was like, excuse me, no. Like, again, if you can't take care of me now, how are you going to be a care? Oh, what's the word I want to say? How are you going to care for me in a relationship moving forward? Yeah. How are you going to provide moving forward? To your point of the man helps put you in your feminine. I think it's also a little bit on us as women to be in that feminine, and especially as entrepreneurs, it's often hard to do that because you're so in the masculine when you are working, and it's inherent to show up often as a more masculine version of yourself when you are doing sales calls or when you are working your 8-hour day. How
12 hours yesterday, by the way.
Oh, jeez. You're right. We did do 12 hours. That's crazy.
12 hours straight.
Dude, because you were up at like 7 a.m. too.
I was the first one there and the last one to leave.
Oh my God. My wild child. But how do you feel like you have been able to bring your feminine energy into your business for starters? And then how do you feel like you're able to shift into that energy when you are going on a date or when you are wanting the man to step into his masculine role?
Well, I'm going to flip. I'm going to answer the second one first.
Perfect.
Just because we're kind of in that same combo. But I think when it comes to dating, women who are in an entrepreneurial type of a position, or even just a corporate position with power, right, where they're making decisions all day, it can be easy to go home and start to make decisions and start to do things and start to want things done your way. And what I've learned is stepping into that feminine means trusting your partner to make the right decision. And maybe it's not the exact thing you would do, but allowing it to be that way, letting go a little bit of control. Right? Women, we tend to be control freaks. So if we can trust them to make the decision, trust them to make that decision, trust them to lead, they will do it more and they will get better. and it's one of those things. You see a lot of men who are just completely deflated because it's like, they try to step into that masculine role and women, their partners will be like, oh, you did it wrong, or you should have done this, or you should have done that. Do you really think that they're going to try again after that? No. So I think it's really important to, take a step back, take a breath. And when there's a decision-making conversation, I will verbalize where I'm at. If I have an opinion, if I want to kind of contribute to the decision, I'll say my 2 cents, but then ultimately it's up to you. And sometimes, most of the time, I will literally say, I'm not making any more decisions for the day. I'm done.
Hands off.
I do that to my dad too. Do you want this for dinner? Do you want that for dinner? What do you want with your steak? I'm done making decisions. I trust that you will provide something that I'm going to be happy with. And it's as easy as that.
Which I think it's important to have an opinion still. And I love that you said that you'll voice your opinion. But at the end of the day, you don't have to make all of the decisions all of the time. And I've seen it so often where there is a power dynamic and the woman feels like she needs to run the household and run the man in order for everything to be perfect. But as with an expert rookie, if you would just allow the man to step into his masculine role, trust him to get the job done or get done what needs to be done, he will step up to the plate. And that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect all the time because we're human, we make mistakes, it's inherent. But if you allow him to try and you work through the mistakes together, quote unquote mistakes, because I don't believe in that, it's just a learning curve. But if you work through it together, then you're going to get to a place where you have a healthy communication in your relationship, and you trust him to get done what needs to be done, and he trusts you as well that you will get done what needs to be done, and you are in the right place to make decisions, but also just take a step back and allow him to lead.
As a team too, as a team. And I'll actually, on the, oh man, what I just lost it. What was I going to say about that? And sometimes, saying, the decision you made isn't perfect, or the decision you made isn't what I would make. I think that it's pretty surprising sometimes. Like sometimes other people's opinions are actually better. We just don't allow it to happen because we want control so much. And I think letting up some of that control will actually prove a different outcome than we expect sometimes too. And I think it's interesting to see where, sometimes where I say like, I think this would have been the best, and someone else makes a decision, it actually ends up being better. And it's an ego thing. If you can drop your ego from needing to make the right decision, from needing to be the one that controls everything, then you'd be a little shocked sometimes. Like, I don't know, your partner might have some good ideas sometimes.
When is a time in your life when you've had to drop your ego, either in a relationship or in business?
That's so hard because I feel like I have a lot of examples where I should have.
Well, you can say that too.
I think just going back to like learning how to allow someone to lead, and especially in a partnership, but also in business, right? I think that, there's a moment that I can remember when I was in an agency job years and years and years ago. I was probably 22.
Mm-hmm.
And we did brand development and social media for hospitality groups. So we were working on the Virgin Hotel. And one of my colleagues, we had written the script. I had stayed up all night working on stuff, and I was the epitome of the overachiever hustler. Kind of like thought I ran the show at 22 years old. I kind of did, but and it came down to who's going to record a video that we were going to send in. And my boss, the agency owner, picked one of the other girls. He said, "Oh, you should do it." And I was so mad because I had been up all night. I wrote the script, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, your outfit looks better for the vibe. Like, you should do it." And I was very rude, and I was
Outfit?
Her outfit was like more of a match for the brand, which he was right. And
but also we're doing this based off of clothing. We're making it. Okay, continue. Sorry.
I also probably had like 2 hours of sleep the night before, so I don't even know what I looked like. So it probably was the right decision. But I was, my response was very ego driven, and I was so angry. It should have been me. I wanted the spotlight, and I wasn't very nice about it, and I wasn't very constructive. And and I course corrected, and I kind of helped afterwards, but my initial response was not one that I'm proud of. And I think that, kind of learning off of that, I don't know if I learned something directly after that, but I have learned that, you don't always have to be the one in the spotlight. And truly, I think, ironically, I've found a lot more fulfillment in helping others grow their businesses. It goes back to like the reason that coaching is so important to me. Being able to lift up other women and see them win and see them succeed, that has become my purpose, my drive. And I think it's interesting, right, that when my ego was so attached and I had this ego that was driving everything, I needed to be the center of everything. But now that I've kind of learned to take the ego out of it, I'm almost in the background. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of become like the shift that I've made in my career. And I think it's a little ironic that there's like the ties between it too, mm-hmm. the shifts that happened.
How did you learn to drop your ego?
Just humility. I don't know. I feel like it's a hard one to say because it's kind of like the boundaries conversation. Like mm-hmm. you just need the reps. Mm-hmm. You need the experiences to say, okay, reflection, like, did I make that decision out of ego? What was the intention behind the decision I made? Mm. Why did I say that? What was my true like outcome that I was looking to get? Mm. And if it's attention driven, then I know it's from the ego. Mm. If it was, mission or purpose driven, then I know that it's from my soul and my spirit.
Mm-hmm. I think that also stands true in disagreements with family, friends, in relationships. Like, it's often hard to drop your ego and admit mm-hmm. when you are wrong, because we just want to be right so badly. Mm-hmm. And we want our partner, our friend, our family to see it from our perspective. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things for me in being able to drop my ego is actually shifting seats and being like, okay, mm-hmm. how are they perceiving this situation right now? I was actually in a conversation with one of my good friends, and I had sent her a text, and she had sent me back a text explaining how she was feeling. And my initial reaction was, I don't understand why she's fucking feeling this way. Like, I don't get it. But upon, like you said, reflection and shifting my seat to sit where she was sitting, I was like, okay, I get how we got there. And even though that wasn't my intention, I'm able to drop my ego and be like, okay, mm-hmm. This is where I fell short, but now how can we come to an agreement mm-hmm. of where we are mm-hmm. in our conversation?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's so good. I was listening to a TED Talk, and it's an older TED Talk, and it was a neurologist that worked with military vets. Mm-hmm. And he was describing the way that trauma works in your brain. And, you have your subconscious level, your like lizard brain, the background, and then you have your conscious level. And the conscious level is where you make decisions, right? So that's where you're going to actually take action. But the subconscious level is always operating in the background. It's always influencing the conscious level and your initial responses. So, he was talking about how PTSD works, and when, vets are coming back home from being overseas in more of like a war zone where their fight or flight is activated and truly like survival mode is active, and then they come to a place where logically they know they're safe, but the subconscious brain is still back in that war zone. It's still in that space where the trauma is going to kind of trigger that response and put them in a position where they may react to kind of like protect themselves. So he was kind of, he was comparing that to just any kind of trauma, right? Like childhood trauma, the way that your parents respond and react. So if your parents were very loud and were very, emotionally aggressive when you grew up, and then you get into your adult life and someone else raises their voice, that fight or flight response is going to trigger, and you're going to have the similar reaction as a child. Right. So being able to understand that our subconscious brain is going to react faster than our conscious brain, and then identifying, okay, was that a real threat? Am I responding to a real threat, or am I responding to something that my subconscious brain is identifying as a threat? And having that discernment and being able to kind of catch when we do have that nervous system response that maybe we don't have control over, learning to regulate that. It was very interesting, and it's been super helpful for me too, just to kind of, identify like where are things coming from? Is it a real threat? Am I just responding? Am I just reacting?
Yeah, which is not always easy to do in the moment, but I do think that's why pausing during your conversation and actually processing things, because we want to react so fast and we want to get our word in. We want to make sure our piece is said instead of sitting back and processing literally in the moment. One of the things that Jefferson Fisher always talks about is taking the 2-second breath, which I love because it allows you to process what's going on. It also allows the other person to process what's going on. And each person can come from a healthier place versus just reacting off of your initial thought and maybe saying something that you regret, or that hurts the other person, or that hurts you.
100%.
Just a quick little pivot, because I know we could talk about relationships all day, but getting back to the sales portion of it. So you had a $7,000 in restaurant investment, a freelance phase, and a closer gig with zero background experience, which I think is incredible. And again, talk about an expert rookie in our mix. Jesus Christ.
Midst.
I've given up on English today. It's fine. In our midst, literally. The fact that you had no experience is incredible, and you went after it anyway. But what does that period actually tell you about yourself in hindsight, and how did that get you into the role that you're in now?
Delusional confidence is going to win in everything. And I think that I had so much delusional confidence when I was in my early 20s, and honestly, probably my whole life. I think, the $7,000 investment, it was a coaching course, and I wanted to teach hospitality owners how to do social media. That was one venture that I ran down, tried it, failed. I did social media management on my own, did it for a while, was successful, and then dropped the ball. I opened a photo studio, a physical photo studio that people came in and rented by the hour, kind of like an Airbnb almost, in the middle of COVID, turned into like an event center. I was getting bridal showers, baby showers. I had built the whole studio set with furniture and designed the whole thing. It was very fun, but also ended up kind of being somewhat of a failure. And I think the biggest lesson that I can learn from that is, one, we've said this before, none of those are failures. They're all lessons. They were all things that I learned and took away and used today. And, when people say, how did you get to where you are? How did you become successful? How did you, get to this place? It's because I was failing more than anyone ever even tried. So I think taking those opportunities, never saying no. Anything that came across my desk, I was like, sign me up. And I overloaded myself. I always had 4 jobs at a time. And could I have put some energy into one thing and been really successful? Probably. But, I think it's more fun to me to kind of try things, see how they feel, and really create a unique experience that no one can replicate. Right? Because of all of my experiences together, I have a unique identifier that makes me different. And when I, coach women that are trying to get on a high ticket sales roles, but they don't have sales experience, they're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I've never done sales before. What am I going to say? They want experience. They want this and that. It's like, you have experience. You just need to frame it as a way to showcase your skills. Restaurant waitresses, you were talking to people, figuring out what they wanted, make sure that their experience was good, upselling them to different menu items, right? There's so many things that you can say that you did and the skills that you had to showcase that you can do sales too.
Mm-hmm. This was something I was actually talking with one of my clients about recently. The fact that you just need to learn how to sell yourself and take the experiences that you've had prior and make that why you're valuable. Because literally that's how I've gotten every job. I've worked in 7 different industries and none of them were related whatsoever. You take sports, entertainment, and then you work in marketing and home building. It's like nothing is related. But if you can take the one skill that is transferable between those and make that your value, you'll literally sell yourself. You will literally get any job, any position that you want. You'll make any sale that you want. You just have to know how to pick up on that value.
Totally.
And then position it to the client or the person you're selling.
Yeah. So I have a hack for this.
Tell me.
So I teach my students when they're doing their applications for high ticket sales roles to use the PSO method. So I want you to think of a scenario that you had a problem in a work life situation, whatever it may be, previous career. You had a problem. What was the solution and what was the outcome? If you can tell me that story with those 3 pieces in 1 to 2 sentences, I can understand how you problem solve. I can understand how you think, and I can understand how you could be valuable to me.
Oh, I love that.
It's a really, really great hack. I say to use it in an application that you're submitting text, or especially Loom videos. Loom videos are really important in the application process for a high ticket closer. So if you can tell that story and actually keep them engaged, like you said, it's you're selling yourself in a way that's going to be more stand out than just saying, I'm a fast learner, I'm a problem solver, right? Like tell me an example and get me to listen.
What would you say is your biggest lived experience that has played into your role now?
There's a couple that come to mind. I think we talked about this on the last pod briefly, but my first job in Dallas, I was working at Twin Peaks Restaurant, and I travel trained for them. So
travel trained, what do you mean?
Yeah, so just to kind of like put a visual to what that was, is we would go to the restaurants before they opened for a week, and they had already hired the staff. So we had, 60 to 100 girls, depending on how big the location was. And we would need to train them on the menu, the steps of service, the standards for their uniform, all of the things that went into being a Twin Peaks girl. We had the manuals, we had the presentations, and I was part of the team that taught that, not only to the staff, but also the management, and made sure that they understood it. So every other week, I was in a different city training a new team on these standards. And I think it really kind of drove the piece that I do now on the coaching aspect and kind of like the explaining thing. I love to help people understand things in a very simple way so that they can walk away with a tangible skill. So I think that's really where that started. And I was 18, 19 years old when I was doing that. And then, kind of bleeding into, I worked in agencies for years. I was always kind of in that fast-paced life, doing a lot of things at once. And I think that's where the entrepreneurship piece comes into play, where, I think I've been in more corporate roles that are just one job and one company, and it doesn't work for me. And I think that entrepreneur itch, comes from that experience. And, and I think that, that love for teaching came from Twin Peaks Restaurant of all things.
That's a wild statement right there.
I opened the Vegas store and I was on the billboard for years.
Get out.
Years. I was on that bill. I think I went, I went to Vegas when I turned 30, and it was gone by then, but I had gone when I was probably 25 or 26, and it was still up. It was still up there. If we make if we have a clip, I'll put a picture of
Yes.
of it up there.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we'll make that
They
happen.
used it forever.
Dude, you're a Vegas staple.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
It was me and two other girls. We were the blonde, the redhead, the brunette. That's like the whole Twin Peaks thing. So I was obviously the blonde.
So you had started sales literally all the way back then.
Yes. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What do taking a little bit of a pivot from that story, but what do you think makes high ticket sales so valuable right now? Because I feel like it's such a hot position to be in, and there's so many people who are wanting to do it. And then you have the Shelby Sapps of the world who are blowing it up with the She Sells Academy.
Mm-hmm.
What is making it the way it is today?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a couple things I'll say on this is, I think a lot of people think high ticket sales is like a new thing, or like, even the coaching space is like this new thing. It's truly not, right? Like Tony Robbins has been around forever. He's been doing he always did more in-person events, but ultimately it's the same type of mentorship. And the way that I look at it too is the oldest high ticket sales or coaching type of a industry or coaching type of a offer is McDonald's. McDonald's is you're like, where are you going with this?
Yeah, I'm very curious.
So McDonald's is a franchise, and I guess you can categorize any franchise into this statement, but McDonald's doesn't sell people, but McDonald's corporate, right? They don't go and open all these stores across the US or across the world, right? Like they have franchise owners, and what they give those franchise owners is a manual on how to run a business, and they teach them how to run a McDonald's. So they're not operating anything inside the business. It's the franchise owner's responsibility. But McDonald's tells them the brand standards. McDonald's walks them through how to be successful. It's a coaching program.
Interesting. I had no idea about that.
In a way.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch. But just to go back to like why it's so valuable now, I think that, for one, high ticket sales coaching has been around forever. And two, I think that just coaching from, I think that there are just more coaches that are popping up, right? Everyone's going digital. Fitness is not as big of a deal in person, right? People are going to the online space with fitness, and fitness is such a wide audience that it's becoming a lot more mainstream. Coaching has kind of historically been more business focused, so not every single person is going to be exposed to it. But you have, like the Airbnb arbitrage, you have the UGC creators, which that's another newish industry that's been popping up. Social media marketing can tend to be more of like a high ticket sales kind of sale. But yeah, I think the biggest thing to kind of explain the boom that's happened is that the general population is getting more exposure to coaching in general. And a lot of that is through health, wellness, and fitness. And I think the draw for a lot of people is coming from getting the exposure to remote work in COVID and wanting to have a remote job. And then also having that idea of, uncapped earnings. I think those are the two most appealing things for people. And who doesn't want to work from wherever and actually be able to afford it? I think it's really tough to find a position that you can do that and, actually be successful. And yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity, but it's tough too, because there's not always good opportunity too. Like with the influx of coaches have also brought a lot of bad offers too. So I think discernment's really important.
You talked about people wanting more coaching and how overall as a population, we are just gravitating towards different personal or business development programs and wanting that mentorship now. And there's so much more of it. There's so much more access to it. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think it's just the digital age, right? Like we grew up with our phones glued to our hands. We had computers growing up. Our parents didn't have the same experience. So when you're talking about learning in an online environment or, learning outside of the standard normal education constructs, right? Going to college, getting a master's degree, like that's standard education historically. But now you can go for something specific actually learn something that's going to be a skill that makes you more money or makes you, more, gives you the knowledge to be healthier, right? Like you don't have to go to school, you don't have to go to a classroom. And that's becoming more widely adopted just because of generational, adaptation to technology, right? So I think that's the biggest pull, and that's the reason that it's becoming, you no longer have to go to a gym to find a trainer. You can find one on the other side of the world and you can still work with them. You don't have to go to school and work with a business professor. You can hire Alex Hormozy or Tony Robbins or Jay Shetty. Like those are people that you can have access to now, where before that would have been impossible.
Do you think the collective consciousness is rising?
It's a tough one to answer.
You don't have to also if you don't.
No. I'm not really sure, because I think it's all about who you surround yourself with. So for me, I choose to surround myself with a lot of people who are more conscious. So I feel like the consciousness level is rising because of who I'm interacting with. Now, if we're going to talk about averages, I'm not sure if that's the case. I think that, I think it's tough. I would like to think that it is. I would like to think that people are, starting to have a little bit more discernment and making their own decisions. But it's hard. I don't know if I really see it. I think Nick Comodina, our mentor, said something on a call the other day about a new virus that came out. And he's like, did you guys hear about this? I don't even remember the name. And he's like, did you guys hear about this? And we're all like, no. And he's like, isn't that interesting that COVID happened and we were told that it was going to be dangerous and it was going to kill all these people and it was going to affect us. And we listened and we did what we were told, and we locked up and stayed home and listened to what the government told us. And then a couple of years later, they tried to do it again, and they elevated it. This can be the same thing as COVID. Tried to kind of, make it seem like it was going to be the same reaction, and no one listened. So to me, that might be an indication of maybe some raised consciousness among people, but it also might just be, it's the same story and they're just telling the wrong story to us. The next one might be something that actually sticks. So I don't know.
It could be like the whole UFO thing too, where they were just using it to distract from what was going on in USA politics at that point.
Yeah.
But we as a generation are like, we know what you're doing. We know what's going on, and we're trying to make up our own minds at this point instead of just listening to what everyone tells us. So
yeah. I mean, I think it's when you experience those things, and like I think there's a lot more experiences that are happening like that, it creates a little bit of distrust in politics and distrust in media, and I think that that's starting to be a little bit more mainstream. So maybe that does mean the consciousness level is rising. I don't know. How do we test it?
You're asking the wrong girl.
I need a survey.
Listen, as well as I did in science in school, I don't know if I really am a classified researcher here. But before we end this episode, for every woman who's listening to this, what's one thing you would want her to know?
I think women as a collective need to go into things with more audacity and more delusional confidence, because the reason that men dominate so many fields isn't necessarily because they're better. It's just because they think they're better. And because they think they can, and maybe let me rephrase that. The reason that there are so many fields that are male dominant isn't because they're inherently better at things, but they believe in themselves. If you've ever talked to a young sales guy who's getting into an entry-level job, he will tell you he's going to be the top rep by next year, without a doubt. If you ask a woman, she'd be like, well, okay, yeah, I could probably do really well, but like maybe not do the best in the company. And we just doubt ourselves a lot more. And I think it's a disservice because we have a lot to give, and we know, I've seen women who are extremely successful in sales. I've seen women who are extremely successful entrepreneurs. And, I think it's important to walk into it and have that delusional confidence and walk in like you own the place. Right?
Why do you think we do that to ourselves as women?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a nature or nurture thing. I think that women are a little bit more intuitive. Just naturally, we have a little stronger intuition. Not to say men don't have intuition, but we tend to have stronger intuition. That's the reason that it's called females intuition for that reason. But yeah, because we have a little bit of a stronger intuition, I think that we also can be a little bit more hesitant at times. And if energy is off, we maybe doubt things or doubt ourselves. And transparently too, I think that our cycles make it a lot harder for us to have decision making abilities confidently, right? Like men are on a 24-hour cycle, so they're going to be much more regulated when it comes to decision making. We are on a 28-day, 32, whatever it ends up being, mine sometimes like 48-day cycle, and it's not always as clear to us because our hormones may be impacting the way that we're thinking or the way that we're making a decision, right? Like, have you ever heard that you shouldn't make a decision about a man when you are in your ovulation phase?
No, really?
So when you're dating and you're in your ovulation phase, obviously you're looking to procreate, you're looking to reproduce, so your levels of your inhibitions are going to be lower, right? Your standards are going to be a little bit lower. You're going to let things slide because you want to reproduce. Like that's the only thing that's like your hormones are telling your brain. Versus when you're on your period, you're looking for the things that are a lot more stable, right? Or like other phases, you're looking for things that are more stable, that are a little bit more concrete, so you're going to have a little bit more discernment. I also know women who don't make decisions when they're on their period at all because they don't trust what they're going to say. And I think that recognizing that and recognizing that we have differences biologically between men and women is more powerful than just saying, oh, we should all be the same and we should all be equal. Like, of course we should have equal rights, but we are different inherently. And I think leaning into that is more important than just saying, oh, well, don't call me different. Like I can do anything that a man can do. Well, yeah, but also recognize that you have a hormonal cycle that's going to change the way that you think, and being in tune with that and being aware of that is going to make you more powerful than ignoring it.
How do you think our cycles play into sales and how we sell as women?
Oh, 100%. Like a ton, so much. Oh my gosh. I know when I am in my like ovulation phase, my follicular phase, a little bit more like bubbly personality, I tend to have more of that connection. I have more energy. I can show up a little bit different and a little bit better. When I'm in my like luteal phase or I'm in my, my actual cycle, like on my period, I'm a lot more punchy. But again, I think it's like take those things to your advantage, right? Like sometimes when I'm on my period, I'm better at sales because like my give a fuck is down. And I'm like, I don't tolerate the bullshit. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to let that slide. And sometimes it ends up being kind of powerful.
I was going to say, I feel like people like that energy of I don't give a fuck, because then they, as the client or who you're trying to sell to, is chasing you a little bit. And they're like, wait, but I want you to give a fuck.
You always want to chase. Yeah. You always want to be chased. Sorry. Don't chase.
We don't chase here on Expert Rookie.
Yeah. You want to be chased.
Exactly. Lauren, before we end, is there anything else that you want to touch on or talk about?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Okay, perfect. Then
I feel like we covered off on everything. I mean, I feel like we kind of touched every topic, and yeah, it's a pleasure chatting with you again, and I can't wait to do another one.
Dude, right back at you. Thank you for coming on. For anyone who's looking to get into high ticket sales, please reach out to Lauren. She is our high ticket sales big sister, and thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us.
Yeah, I love it.
We love you. Have a great day, you guys.
Right. Have the best day of your life.
Sweet.